What is up, Gamer Army? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Psycho Gamer. As always, I'm your host, Aubrey, and today we are going to come up with the question of Arcade1up. What's next? You've already announced a bunch of games, but what is next for the retailer? Some of these games have already come out, but let's take a look at some games that could possibly come out that I haven't necessarily put on a list, but maybe I have put on the list because they just need to come out. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe and turn on the post notifications, guys. We're going to go over some really good golden age of video games right after this. Welcome back once again, guys. Like I mentioned, we are going to go over some golden age of video games today. Basically talking about what Arcade1up could be looking at next, and some games that have come out in the early to mid 1980s. We're not going to go over every single one that we would love to see because this would be an hour-long video. I try to keep my videos about 10-15 minutes so that you guys don't have to watch an hour of me, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think I'd like to talk a little bit, joke around, like woo-woo. But what are some of the games that we would really like to see? I'm just going to go down a list of games here that some have already been released, but some have not been released. Now, I'm talking about having their own dedicated cabinet themselves. I'm not talking about, hey, they've already been on Arcade1up's radar. They've already been released by Arcade1up, but only as a second afterthought, like a secondary game. I'm not talking about primary games. So some of the games that you could be looking at: Space Invaders, which has already gotten their own. Galaxian. They've already had Galaga as one, I believe. Lunar Lander. That's another one that is a favorite of many people. I don't necessarily think it really is warranted its own release, though. Asteroids, obviously, has had its own. Battlezone. Now, here's one that I really liked. I liked Berserk. Berserk, I loved playing it on the Atari 2600. I never played it in the arcade, but I'm sure it played just as good as the Atari, if not a lot better, because it is a standalone arcade cabinet. I just really loved that game. I don't know, something about it. Centipede, obviously Centipede has been released by Arcade1up. However, the trackball, or rollerball as you know me of saying, is absolutely horrible. Most people who actually buy this game upgrade the actual trackball itself. So if they could release a version of that with a much better trackball, I think a lot of people would be happier. I think they should just toy with the idea of releasing a better option. Have their $300 and $400 options, but then release one that might be about $600-700 and see which one's going to actually sell much better. Obviously, the lower priced ones are going to sell really well, but for those of us that really want to have something a little more true in terms of quality and really in terms of quality, I think that they would really sell, especially if they had specific parts in them. If they just have these cheap Chinese knockoff parts that are good to have in there to keep price down, I think that they would actually see a jump in sales a little bit more from many people who are arcade aficionados. Missile Command, great game. It could have its own machine. Pac-Man obviously has had its own machine. Now, another game that came out was called Phoenix. Phoenix was a game, it's just kind of a shooter game, almost, just shooting straight up. Apparently it was one of the first games to feature a boss battle or a boss fight of some sort. Could that actually have its own? I think if they put it in there with the right games, maybe a 5 or 6 game option or upwards of 12 game, it might actually have a good following. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that this Phoenix game would be a good option? Who knows? Now, one game they really haven't done too many of, they haven't done too many racing games. But the game Rally X would be a really, really good option. Now, I can flip over to my screen because we're going to go ahead and just look at this list that I'm going at. And yes, I am mostly looking at Wikipedia, but I think these are games that we could just definitely talk about. So here's the list of games that I'm really looking at. I'm going down from Space Invaders. I've gotten all the way down to Rally X right now as well. You can see some of these pictures of the actual games themselves. Rally X, great little racing game. I think another racing game would be good, especially a classic game such as this. Star Castle, I never really played it. Is it worth or worthy of having its own standalone cabinet? I don't think so. Wizard of War, I believe that's actually on an upcoming game. But, again, do you think it's worth them releasing as a standalone cabinet? Now, I know a lot of these cabinets, they had a very unique look to them, such as, your Donkey Kongs and Tempest has a very unique look, which obviously they are actually releasing. Defender, great game on its own. They've already released it over on Arcade1up, if I'm not mistaken. Whether it was one of their full cabinets or whether it was one of their smaller ones. Donkey Kong. Obviously, Nintendo holds the rights to anything Donkey Kong and Mario. Will we ever see it? Please. We want to see the Nintendo games released. Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, you're not doing anything with those old classic games. Want to make some extra money, Nintendo? Allow Arcade1up to have the rights to release these games. Frogger has already had a release. Still a great game. Scramble, first scrolling shooter game featuring forced horizontal scrolling motion. So that's not one that I actually played myself, but I'm sure plenty of you guys have played it. What do you guys think? Galaga definitely had its own machine. Gorf, believe that is actually on an upcoming title. Miss Pac-Man, obviously, she got her release last year. Great game. I actually prefer Miss Pac-Man over regular Pac-Man. I don't know. Just something about how the game played and how the game looked that kind of set a little better with me over just the regular Pac-Man games. Kicks or Quicks or however you want to actually call this. I never played it in the arcade, but I did actually have it on my Atari Lynx, which was actually a pretty fun game. Once those little lines get going, there's no stopping them. You could really play that game for a very, very long time. You got a SNK game here, Vanguard. Don't know if I'd really put that one on there. Burger Time has had its own. Very, very unique case that has had a very limited run. If I'd gotten into Arcade1up a lot earlier and had a lot more room, most likely I would have gotten something like the Burger Time cabinet, just because of how unique and cool that it looks. Dig Dug, obviously it's had its own. Donkey Kong Jr., again, that falls into that line of Nintendo-based games that we really, really like to see. Do we want to see a Donkey Kong and have Steve Wiebe going for that title again, even though he has his own? I don't think they can really squeeze too many more points out of those cabinets. Frontline, I never played it, but it was a shooter game, basically is really what it boils down to. Joust hasn't been released as its own standalone by Arcade1up, but the fact that it has been on a few of their different titles and a few of their different cabinets, I think would really be a great addition. At least in my opinion, I think Joust would be great, especially when you look at just the name on the cabinet itself. Its artwork alone would make you want to have it in your collection. Maybe I'm alone. What do you guys think? Do you guys think Joust deserves its own cabinet title? by Arcade1up. I think it would sell. I think it would sell a whole lot better than some of these limited edition Street Fighter or limited edition NBA Jam titles that they're releasing. I don't know. Jungle King. I do remember playing it vaguely, but it is released by Taito in 1982. So I think that would be interesting, but I think it was better left to the consoles more than anything else. Kangaroo. Not as familiar with it, but I don't know. Not too many people liked it from what I understand. Moon Patrol, I do believe that's getting a release if it hasn't gotten a release already over on a separate cabinet. Maybe not by itself, but it says it's the first arcade game to feature parallax scrolling, or parallax technique in computer games, computer graphics where background images move past the camera more slowly than the foreground images, creating an illusion of depth in a 2D scene of distance. I don't know. Pengo. Penguin game. Why not? It could have its own. It'd be unique. Kids would love it, I'm sure. Pole Position. This would be a great game. Heck, they had a cartoon of it. They had their own theme song for it. Maybe not in the game, but it was something that you could actually watch on television. If you don't remember the Pole Position game, go look it up on YouTube. If you don't remember the cartoon, go look the cartoon up on YouTube as well. Now, it did have an actual sit-down version of it as well, so that could be something they might be able to look at as well. Now, all these sit-down ones, while they are cool, they just don't seem complete to me because some of them actually had the canopy that went over the top of them. I think if Arcade1up released these cabinets and then sold that separately as an add-on, I think people would buy that, at least as the add-on itself. Maybe that's just me. What do you guys think? Popeye, another Nintendo game, had that unique look in terms of the cabinet. So if you look at the Mario Brothers, if you look at Donkey Kong, you look at Popeye, they all had that very, very unique look where they had the art style all the way around the actual plexiglass in front of the screen. So could they do it good? They could do it really, really well. Q*bert. Do I need to say any more? Q*bert is Q*bert. Q*bert has that look. It has the feel. You just know that game is 80s. You know that is arcade classic history. That one would be amazing. Robotron 2084 has that look. I think it could have its own standalone system as well. Now, when I say standalone system, it's a matter of what games they are going to pair up with it that have a similar yet unique style of gameplay. Use the same buttons, have the same kind of look, have the same kind of feel. If they release something like Centipede and put Pac-Man on there, that's not going to work very good. But with some of these games, I think that they could make some really, really good decisions to make some really good money to make not only themselves happy, but also their clientele, their customers, so that we want to keep coming back. Yeah, it's great that they've announced things like Pong and Tempest, but we want more. They had more titles coming out. I think they can make a lot of money. Gravitar, another game similar to Asteroids and Space Duel in terms of controls. Time Pilot, another game by Konami. Space Combat, aerial combat. And of course, we cannot forget Tron. Tron. I've mentioned this in previous videos before. You guys know that. I love the look of the Tron machine. I love the look. I love the gameplay as well. They could do Tron. They could do discs of Tron. They can do 3 or 4 different kind of games that would work with this particular control scheme. Yeah, there's not many games that would actually have that control scheme. They're pretty much all Tron-based games, which is literally like, I think, 2 or 3 games. So if they could release this, oh my goodness. Granted, yes, most of us would probably hate the joystick and have to replace the joystick, much like most of their games. But the fact that it has the spinner and actually has the actual joystick shaped uniquely, I think it would look amazing in anybody's home arcade, period. Xevious, Zaxxon, both great games that were pretty much great on the consoles, especially Atari, whether it was the 2600, 5200, 7800, any of those kind of cabinets, they were great. Xevious is the first video game to have a TV commercial. Go find it on YouTube if you have not seen it. Zaxxon, very unique gameplay with it. First game to employ isometric axonometric projection, which the game is named after. So, very different look to these. Crystal Castles, another really cool looking case. Dragon's Lair obviously is getting a release soon if it hasn't already started hitting people's homes. Elevator Action, that game was just fun. I loved Elevator Action. I did play it in arcades a little bit. I played it more on the home consoles. Gyrus, Mappy. Mappy is getting releases not by itself. It is being put on other cabinets. It's already been released on a few different cabinets. So, go check that out if you haven't. Mario Brothers. Again, we're back to Nintendo here. Sinistar. Spy Hunter. Spy Hunter was an amazing game. I love Spy Hunter. I've actually hung out and met the guy who has the world record for Spy Hunter. And he has a crazy way of playing that game. I don't know how he figured out how he could do some of these boosts by being off the map almost. So it's really, really cool. I did not get Star Wars, but I know a lot of people really, really liked the Star Wars game. Star Trek, it's Star Trek. I mean, why not? Tapper, let's go ahead and give people beer. Why not? Track and Field would be an interesting one. There wouldn't be too many games that they could really add on with that particular game. 1942, while they are not releasing 1942 in its own standalone cabinet, which I think it would be worthy of, there are some other companies that are releasing some of the little quarter-sized ones as well. So if you've seen some of those online, 1942 and 1943 are getting their own and quarter-sized release, which is what they're calling them. Karate Champ, Kung Fu Master, and Paperboy. Everybody thought Paperboy was getting its own release here from some of those hints that John D. dropped at us. Alas, that was not the case. Same with Punch-Out, or what became Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. They just... He messed with our minds when it came to all those little hints that he was dropping before they announced all these other arcade games. But that's gonna be it for the list, guys. What do you guys think? In terms of the list that I gave you guys, which ones do you think deserve their own standalone cabinet? There are a lot on this list that deserved their own cabinet, up to and including the Nintendo ones. Could they do a standalone for Popeye, Donkey Kong, and Mario Brothers? They really could. Could they put them all in the same cabinet? They probably could get away with putting them all in the same cabinet, but where's the fun in that? Would be a whole lot cheaper than going and spending $1,000 to $2,000 on each of these machines if you want to get them in really decent shape. But there's always the possibility the mechanic's not working correctly, the CRT monitor not looking so great. You might have to put more money into getting it if you do get one of the actual original arcade machines. But what do you guys think? What is your favorite cabinet that you would like to see released? What is your favorite cabinet that is out? I want to hear from you guys. But I appreciate you guys coming out and watching my videos. liking and subscribing. I do appreciate you guys doing that. We did manage to hit that magical 500 number. So I do appreciate each of you guys coming out to watch my videos. I would not do this if it were not for you guys. If it was just me, releasing it for me, I wouldn't even bother doing this. But on one more personal note, I did not pass my test the other day. So my Security Plus by CompTIA, I have to take it again. But I did learn a lot when it came to that test and where my weaknesses are in terms of that test. So it did get me down for a few days, but I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to come back stronger. And next time, I'm going to rock that test. That test is going to be mine, and that's going to be the end of it. But do you guys have a test that you got to take? Make sure you study after video games, of course. But until next time, guys, game on.